All right, we appear to be live. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Oden, if I can talk, founder of Nine Realms Publishing LLC and writer of comics like Elysian Fields and The Embrace. This is my show, Comic Call, where we bring in a lot of writing talent in the comic industry to discuss various topics in the form of these digital panels, which have become a pretty big thing over the past year. We are joined by my co-host, Will Perdomo from Incredible Comics. I'm going to let him come on and introduce himself for everyone here. Welcome, Will.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be on this inaugural show.
We're happy to have you. Thanks for being my co-host, man.
No problem.
Well, introduce yourself, Will. Let people know who you are if they don't know for whatever reason.
Well, I am William Perdomo. I am the co-writer of Black Flag, which is now in demand on Indiegogo. And I'm here to help my good friend Mike Oden launch his show, and where we can talk about exactly what we're doing, which is writing and all topics of writing. So excuse my awkwardness. I'm not used to being the Ed McMahon or whoever Johnny Carson's sidekick was or whatever. But I if I could be second fiddle to anybody, it would be Michael Oden.
Dude, I appreciate it. Well, as I said, we are going to be talking to a bunch of panelists that are up and coming writers in this industry. I'm really excited to bring out the talent we have with us tonight. We have 4 panelists. One of them is running a bit late. They had their daughter's birthday to deal with, so I mean, these things happen. Family takes precedence, obviously, but we do have some fantastic talent to introduce you guys to. So the first person we're going to be bringing out is none other than Buddy Lord from Sins of the Fae. Let's bring out Buddy.
Yo!
Welcome, Buddy.
Hey, welcome. Glad to be here. All that good stuff. You know, people thought I was extinct.
Oh, I haven't seen you in months, so I figured, okay, he's gone, dead, buried.
I know,
you're
right?
Not wrong, Buddy. I was worried for a minute.
The archaeologists found me.
Can't keep a good buddy down.
That's right. That's right. You cannot.
All right, buddy. Let's introduce you to everybody. Let people know who you are, where they can find you, and where they can get Sins of the Fae.
You can go to sinsofthefae.com, and I'll put it in the private, so you can put it out. Sinsofthefae.com or bladenight.com. BLADENITE. Cutting to the chase. I am here to clear the chaff so that people can find their way to their dreams, because we're all writers. So we had other people, right, that were before us that created great stories and inspired us. And that's all I want to do.
Outstanding. All right. So the next person we're going to be bringing on here tonight is none other than Unhinged Entertainment's Jason Bascom. Let's welcome him to the show.
Welcome, Jason.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. This is going to be fun, I hope.
We hope so too. Jason,
too.
let's let people know who you are and where they can find you.
I'm Jason Bascom. I'm co-founder of Unhinged Entertainment, creator, writer, artist, letterer of Absolute. You can find me on the Twitterverse on Unhinged Ent, as well as YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. We usually have a little show Tuesday nights. And then also I do like draw-alongs, like 30-minute draw things, or mail thing openings, all that other jazz. So sub to Unhinged Entertainment on YouTube, and we can talk Absolute on there as well. But I wrote Absolute Book 1, fulfilled it, and drew it obviously last year. Everybody seemed to like it, so yeah.
Quite a handsome book, I may add.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that.
Fantastic, man. And before we bring on our next guest, I do want to let everyone know that all the links to everyone's campaigns that are going to be on the panel tonight are in the description. So make sure that you check out those campaigns. Yeah. Every single person here has just absolutely fantastic looking books, and you don't want to miss out on them. And with that being said, we're going to bring in our man with a plan from the land down under. Welcome, Lee Byron Carver, or better known as the man called Kemosabe.
G'day everyone, I'm the man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, and thanks for having me on your show, mate.
Welcome, of course, sir. Man.
Are you trying out for Micro Machines later? Because that franchise is dead.
Oh, brother. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, I had like $8 by now.
I have
That
like
guy's,
$8.
yeah, hashtag goals. That guy's next
I'd
level. I
be
thought I
rich.
was good. Oh,
I'd
he's
be
next
rich
level.
in Mexico. You know?
there's always someone better. There's always someone better. Unless your name's Jack Kirby, there's always someone better. Micro Machines guy is definitely, that's my mecca. I'm gonna one day I'm gonna hit those glory giddying heights.
One day you too will be a rodeo auctioneer.
In another life.
Anyways, will you go on ahead and tell people about your book and where they can find you, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So my book's called The Company Man, Dead, White, and Blue. It's 60 pages, full color, 100% art complete. It's in demand right now, so another couple of weeks in demand, and then I'm going to roll that up, send off the digital file, start printing, and send it off to you guys. It's Suicide Squad meets Body of Lies. It's Strike Back meets Black Hawk Down, superheroes, superhumans dealing in the Wild West of the Middle East.
So first principles, without all that, what is it?
What do you mean?
Is it without meets anything? What is it?
It's the conflict that you get when you get the bleakness of the Middle East and you get the shades of grey that exist there, the moral ambiguity, the fact there's no real clear good guys or bad guys. Then you drop a bunch of brightly coloured spandex dudes right in the middle of that and say, okay, deal with this. You've got power. You're walking weapons. How do you cope? Because you can take a gun and aim it and pull a trigger, but what happens when you are the gun? What happens when you are the weapon itself? You know, there's a whole lot more responsibility that lands on your shoulders. And, you know, they do the jobs nobody else wants to do. They kill so that you can stay innocent. They fight so you don't have to. They protect you, but they don't do it because they care about you. They do it because they're paid. Purely mercenary. You know, they're super, but they're not heroes.
Cheers.
You got bitch slapped.
Anyways,
I still don't know what it's about.
I do.
Hey man, go check out the campaign page.
I can give you more of a synopsis, but I didn't really think this was the forum for that. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to give you guys my book. You know,
let's just change the show and make it the Kemosabe show.
At the end of the day, we'll get a chance to talk about everyone's project a little bit towards the end of the show. But the main thing here, as we said, is that this is a panel to discuss the writing aspect of comic book industry, which is something that I feel often goes overlooked. You know, as it is a visual medium, that's what a lot of people are paying attention to, is the art and everything. And so for our inaugural show, we have a pretty fantastic topic, I think. There's been a debate going on in the writing sphere of the comic industry for years versus with the two main schools of thought of writing a script are editorial based versus loose based, better known as the Marvel method versus the DC method, where the DC method is far more hands-on, breaking down panels and everything, and breaking down your page and being very hands-on and controlling from a writing perspective, whereas the Marvel way is very laissez-faire, and effectively you're just putting you're just describing what you want on the page. The artist gets that done, and then you put in your dialogue and everything once those pages are complete. So what we're going to be doing is that every single person on the panel is going to get 2 minutes. Let me get my timer here. Need to go. Timer. All right. Cool. So what we're going to do is every panelist is going to get 2 minutes to talk about.
That's like an hour and a half to Kemosabe.
Yeah, I know, right? he's got an
advantage
to formulate their opening statements and let us know what they feel about it. And then once we clear the opening statements, we will be heading into open forum. You don't have to take up the 2 minutes. You can get what you have to say out, and under those 2 minutes, you don't have to fill it up. It's just that's the maximum allotment of time for each individual, so that way we can spend the majority of the panel in open forum and allow people in the chat to throw in questions that we will bring in towards the end, within the last 15 minutes of the panel. Okay? All right. So with Will being my co-host, we're going to start there, and then we're going to go to Buddy, then Lee, then Jason. And then whenever John's able to join us, if we're already in open forum by that point, we'll backtrack and allow him to get his 2 minutes in as well. Okay. All right. Timer starts now. Going ahead, Will.
I think there's merits to both systems, and with the editorial method, I think the important thing is to have a firm hand in your editorial, somebody who's experienced, somebody who knows what the house style is and what the quality control needs are. But unfortunately, that can kind of stifle creativity, and it can put artificial barriers on the potential of somebody and get what you want out of a writer or of an artist. However, the advantage is quality control, right? The Marvel method has its merits because, again, you're getting, if you can get the right people together who have the ego to do that, you can get something kind of unpredictable out of the artist and as a writer. Because once again, if you're just writing a script, it's going through an artist, it's done, but it gets to the artist, it's rendered, it's finished. In the Marvel method, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly seeing new things, and it's never done until it's lettered. So that way, if I think you get something more dynamic, but once again, it depends on the egos involved, and they both can have their drawbacks, and they can both be very disastrous. I think the Marvel method can actually be much more disastrous if you don't have the proper egos in place on both sides.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. All right, buddy. Your time starts now.
Do what works. I mean, I agree with Will basically on all accounts. It is definitely going to take a certain diminishment of ego, especially with the Marvel side. Like both of you have to, or really the writer more than the artist. The writer just has to say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to get. And, I'm okay with it. I can work with, whatever you hand me. And like you said, up until the lettering, it's not done. And I think, if you have a diminishment of ego and you keep your story, I don't see the problem with any of it. I think, as we say, both have their merits. It just, it's almost like math and formulas, you got to find the right one for the particular situation you're in.
All right. And does that conclude your thoughts, buddy?
Yeah.
All right. Resetting the time. All right, Lee, rock it.
Right, I was really fortunate earlier this week. I managed to be on a panel with Christopher Priest. Can you believe it? I actually got to do like a seminar thing with Christopher Priest where he does this talk and has an open forum bit like this where he takes questions. One of the questions was, how does he feel of Marvel method versus more traditional and editorial, heavily handed sort of method? And he said that he'd never bother giving a full script to someone like John Romita Jr. or Walt Simon. He said that's a waste of time. So I really definitely got to back up on what the dinosaur said. Do what works at the time. It's definitely a negotiation. Like with your artist, depends on what they want. What are they able to give you? Some people can't work in either method. Some people work predominantly in one method or the other. My own book, I wrote the script for myself, so I didn't have a whole lot of explanation about what was actually happening because I knew it all in my head. When I passed this on to the guy that I decided was going to be my artist, once I realized I didn't have the talent to draw the book myself, I'm good, I'm just not quite that good. I had to go back and write a whole bunch of extra stuff on there so that he knew what was happening. So I had to be a lot more hands-on. At the same time, by leaving stuff flexible, he's been able to come back to me and say, hey, how about this? And I said, that's a brilliant idea. Go with that. Let's make that a thing. And he's added to the lore and the visual dynamicism of the team, the company, the characters, and the book itself with his input. So if you don't have any flexibility there, I think you get the purity of your focus of your vision, but you also limit other input that can come in, and your project might be worse off for it.
All right. Getting some recurring
I feel like
themes here.
Like Will Ferrell, he just took the drink of water. You know that? You guys know what I'm talking about? Where he does.
All right, Jason, let's hear from you, bud. Timer starts now.
One versus the other. I mean, as an artist, I actually have a little bit of an advantage because I can speak from that viewpoint. Would actually kind of wouldn't mind a writer giving me something fully described, what's in it. It's a little bit more relaxing on my part in that aspect. But the Marvel method, which is actually how I work, it's freeing for me. I could be more expressive. I can, just change up camera angles or make characters more dynamic and do my own thing. But at the same time, there's a lot of pressure filter as well as to whether or not the writer then is going to actually like what I'm doing. So having that structure for the, that standard editorial method is nice, but it can be constricting as well. It's like I want to flex here and there. So communication would have to then also be established, I think, to make that a really higher standard, in my opinion, it working together. I mean, but then you're kind of veering into a middle ground. So the Marvel method just works to make a more expressive piece. The DC method, I guess you can call it, or the editorial method, it makes a more cohesive, like story and unit to come forth. And everyone says do what works, but you can also play around with those two and meld something that's kind of nice. I think, yeah. So yeah, that's the gist of what I got.
Fantastic. So we've gone through all of our we've gone through everybody's opening statements at this point, and it seems like there's a lot of overlap where in the Army we have this term called MET-TC, which effectively means that like you adjust based off of what the mission requires. And we've got John Hervey that just joined the stream.
Nice.
So
good timing.
Let's bring him on, let him introduce himself. We'll have him do his opening statements, and then I'll proceed into what I was going to say, and we'll get into the open
just
forum.
in time too to do his statement.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, right? John, welcome. Introduce yourself, bud.
Hey, how are you guys doing? It's good.
How you doing, man? Did you Shanghai the kids' room?
We're actually in a different place now.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. It was
my
my daughter's 8th birthday today.
So you got your own headset.
Happy birthday.
No, I'm still taking my kid's headset.
Congratulations.
And I still got my C cup.
But where's your cake, man?
Right here.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right, John.
John Hervey. I'm a writer of Magna, on this side, Magna. So that's, let me reach over here. The books are real.
Yeah, I was about to say, you need to bring one of those out because these things look sexy. They're really good looking books.
They're real. The campaign is, you have 3 options to choose from. The campaign will be open for about another week and a few days. And then we're going to shut down the campaign in its entirety because we're launching the next Black Tiger campaign on the 18th of May. Hold on a quick second. For those of you that missed the first Black Tiger, there will be a Catch Me Up, so you can get Legacy of Fury. And then you can get the second volume as well. So
outstanding.
That is me in a nutshell.
All right, John.
Yes, sir.
So as I had, since you were not here for it, I'll just refresh you, let you know. So the topic of tonight's panel is editorial script writing versus loose script writing. Preference between those two, if you have any, or what are your overall thoughts about it? You have 2 minutes for your opening statement, and then once we finish with your opening statement, I'll begin the open forum discussion, and you guys will be able to go back and forth. Okay? All right.
So we're kind of, speaking about this loose kind of Marvel method. I think there are. So of course it worked well for kind of like maybe like a Stan Lee Ditko kind of a combination. I don't think it's a process that works well all the time. And I think it really depends. Like for myself as a creator, I want to write a complete script and I want the artist to understand what it is I'm trying to do. It doesn't mean that script is just 100% canon. But then that way, if the artist sees what it is I'm trying to do, then they can have the idea of, maybe I have a better way of going about this. Maybe I see where you're trying to go. There may be a better way to get there. I think, if the writer and the artist maybe truly are co-creating, then maybe the Marvel method is a decent way to go. I feel like it puts a lot of onus on the artist to know what's in the mind of the writer. And if the writer does not explicitly state what's on their mind, that can be dangerous, and you can find yourself with, going in completely different directions, with regards to, vision. So I think, like I said, I'm not trying to be a politician. I think it can work.
It's okay. It's okay for you to have like an actual opinion on this.
Yeah,
like,
I think it can work. It's not a method that I use. I want to write the script in its entirety, and maybe, I don't know, maybe for me, I have a vision, and I'm trying to portray that vision so that the artist will know where I'm coming from, and we can be on the same page. It's kind of like in anything. If you want to riff, you first got to know where you're working from. And
John, you got about 10 seconds left on the clock. By the way,
okay.
Just letting you
So that is my conclusion. My thought process is, writing a full script. That's the way that I go.
All right, so we actually now have a dissenting opinion to the rest of the panel. So we have the majority of the panel being in a mindset of METTC, where effectively, as I was saying before John hopped on, METTC is a term that we use in the military to essentially mean that you fluctuate the approach based off of the needs of the mission, right? But there was definitely a preference, I would say, towards that looser style based off of what I was hearing from the majority of the people on the panel. And so now we have John has put up an opposition in discussion where he has preferred the more hands-on editorial standpoint, and under the premise of trying to ensure that his artistic vision as a writer is realized by the artist, which are both fantastic and valid points. So what I want to do is I want whoever wants to start, let's get this conversation going. Let's get some viewpoints going back and forth here.
I'll give a quick caveat. The quick caveat is I'm talking about creator-owned properties where I'm the creator.
And that's at the end of the day, every single one of these people that is on this panel is only working on creator-owned properties. Every single person here is, Will being the one exception, but like Will's also creating stuff on his own too.
Yeah.
But that being said, like we're all working in the indie scene, we're all doing this, and we've built ourselves up. We are agents of ourselves. So I would say that, like let's open the floor. We now have an opposing opinion to bat ideas off of. So let's hit it.
Well, you can, like with the way John likes to work. If you get a decent enough, like he has one, a decent enough artist that can read his script, do what he wants, like what John wants, but then he hits back with John, be like, yo, I know you really wanted this, but I thought maybe this might work a little better. That's just, in a way, you're kind of melding just a little bit of the two, because you're getting, the artist is getting his say, and he can flex a little bit. He's like, look, I really want to, can I play with this panel? Can I have some fun? And John might be like, yeah, go for it. Maybe he shows him a thumbnail and he's like, yeah, I do like that a lot better. You're then going off of a little different viewpoint from the editorial method that he had something in mind. It's still his vision, but he just saw what somebody else did. It's no different than being like, hey, I like the way you drew that face, but did you ever think about doing this with his nose? And the artist's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. It's just another input, and it lets them be a team, and it lets them the comic just grow a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't disagree with anything John said. Like, I understand the idea of the purity of your vision. It also, different people have different levels. Like, some people need a different amount of purity for their vision to be maintained. My artist has changed a bunch of stuff on me. He always check with me first. I'm like, yeah, that's fine, do that. And he said to me, he goes, I've changed heaps of stuff. Are you okay with it? I said, yeah, man, I wouldn't tell you it's okay if it wasn't okay. For me, the purity of the vision is the words coming out of the characters' mouths, the words that I put in them. Of course, because the artist has no impact on that. He doesn't affect that. I ultimately, at the end of the day, decide what comes out of my characters' mouths. Who they are matters more than how they look. So when he says, oh, look, this book's a sausage fest, we need more AAT in there. I said, all right, what do you want? He said, let me put hookers everywhere. I said, okay, hookers and strippers everywhere, man. It's all good.
Nice.
So every time they go into a bar, it's a titty bar. That's a great change. I don't see what the problem with that is. Everybody's going to enjoy that, but and that doesn't change, the overall or purity of the vision. It's still my story. The people who live. The people who die. So some people are Kubrick, and they need every shot exactly the same. 127 takes to get exactly right. Some people are like, did Guy A say the thing that I told you Guy A was going to say? Yes, I'm good. All that other stuff is it's the topping, it's the gravy, it's the cherry on top. And when you've got an artist who really knows what he's doing, he can go, like it has been said already, he can go into areas you didn't even consider. Well,
if you look at Mortal Kombat, the new movie that came out, Kano is the best part of that movie, and most of his lines were improvised by him.
It's because he's Australian.
There you go. But it just goes to show. I mean, if you get a little bit more of a kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? He improv from the another person, it could then free up everything else to improve it a little bit.
Well, Jason, funny. Sorry to interrupt you, Kimosabe.
No, I was.
I want to add to something you both said, which is the Kano and the Kubrick reference. Like, so, for example, the most famous Kubrick improv is Full Metal Jacket, right? So when he got Arlie Ermy on there, none of that was written. Of that famous opening scene in the boot camp where he goes off on all the recruits and he has those strings of profanity and hilarious things he's saying. None of that was in the script. And Stanley Kubrick, as brilliant as he was, as much of a perfectionist as he was, understood that there was places his intellect couldn't reach and he could not understand, like how a drill sergeant talks to a recruit. And he had to rely on that guy's basically internal camera to get what he wanted. And he got something memorable. So I think that sorry, I'll be done in a moment. And I think that's what you have to do with an artist. You have to look at their internal camera. You have to see what it can, try to see what it can see the best you can, and try to write towards that. It's just like Kubrick accepted what Arlie was giving him.
Yeah, there's always going to be limits to what you know. He couldn't possibly have written for that role without having lived that role. He doesn't have that experience to draw upon, so you're going to have to rely on that person's strength and expertise. But which is a great point to point out. I feel like John's on his own here. I do have to say I fully support any writer saying, I'm paying the artist, I'm paying the colorist, I'm paying the letterist, I've written the script, I want it down to the mother effing letter, and if you don't like that, go on, I'll get someone else. And then and if somebody wants to be like me, like, hey, it's all good. Did this guy say what I said he was going to say? Then I'm happy either way. Like, two ends of the spectrum. I can't ever say somebody doing what John's saying, like, I want it my way or the highway. Good power to you, man, because it's your vision, it's your story. You're paying the big bucks, you're paying the bills. You should have the right to say that.
Well, isn't Alan Moore very head on and dead on, and I want it this way? Isn't that how?
That's what I've heard.
The thumbnails, everything.
And to interject really quickly as the moderator, I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking because this is what my job is. I stand back, I put the questions out, and I let you guys discuss. But I do want to make sure that people who are watching understand that this is in no way us telling you how to write a script and trying to be like there is only one right way, because there isn't. It's at the end of the day, it's up to you. This is a discussion between people who are professionals in the field and discussing what they believe works best for them and what they have seen work best through their experience.
Stone with a hammer and file, I don't want to hear
it. Just clay tablets.
Well, writing is an iterative process, and the way I always looked at it was, rather than saying it's my way or the highway, I'm putting this in stone. What I do is I put the entirety of my vision down, because when the entirety of my vision is down, then the artist can say, I see what you're doing, and I see where it works, and I see where maybe it won't work as well. And that's kind of the synergy that I've had with my artists, where they'll say, I see what you're doing here, I see what you're trying to achieve, but I think there's a better way to get there. So I really look at it as more of, the writing is going to be the first and the last thing done, right up to the production of the book. Yeah. And honestly, if I were working on a project, kind of the way that Will is, I think I would take much more of an editorial view, because you have someone who's already, this is a long-standing, long-created project, and you want to make sure that you're coming alongside, you need to be getting that buy-in as you're going, as opposed to, hey, boom, here's my thoughts, here's my script. He's kind of like, wait, Black Flag is my baby. You gotta, get buy-in from me as we kind of go down the road.
I suppose there's something else to consider is if the concept is coming to you from the artist. An artist says, look, I've got this concept, and this has happened to me. I've had people approach me to work on books for them. They said, here, I'm the artist. I've got this concept. I want you to help me develop it and do the actual scripting, the page-to-page scripting. But here's the overall story, the characters. Here's what I want to have happen. You're working within that framework. It'd be really hard to be cut and dried and say, well, this is how I want it to be because it's their vision. So they're saying my way or the highway. Here's what I want to draw, and you're saying, well, I've got a right to that. That's a whole completely different. I mean, you'd have to be dynamic. You'd have to have synergy there. You'd have to be able to turn on a dime, and you'd have to be able to have the skill to synthesize what they want into a product they still want. It's got to run through your filter and still be something that they want. And then they'd probably want the script output the way they want it, whether they want a full script or whether they want something looser. Maybe something looser works because it's their original plot, their original idea. And their original character, so they already know what it's going to look like on the page. They just want you to fine-tune the actual words coming out of the mouth. There's so many degrees here, and like you said, Michael, there's no wrong way to do it. I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody write a script the way I write it. Mine was almost in reverse. I almost wrote it backwards because I was writing for myself as an artist first, and I had to revisit it to give it to another artist. And then that artist isn't a native English speaker, so then I had to revise it again to really explicitly with simplified language, because I was looking at the translations I was getting off him. He'd type in Portuguese, translate it to English, and give it to me, and I could see how the words were coming out. Like, I know what he's trying to do. It's not working. Yeah. So I had to go back and rewrite the script, not the dialogue, but the description stuff, and say, on this page, character A is and I had to do a really simple, like second grade language, because anything more complex than that, like somebody asked a question on Twitter the other day to translate a word from Spanish. He said, does it translate more to judgment or does it translate more to sentence, like a prison sentence? Which word does this word? Because those two things mean the same thing. If you've been judged by a judge, you get a sentence. So those two things could be simultaneous. He said, what way does this word translate? If I use complex language, it's going to come back to my artist. It's too complex. It's going to come out wrong. So I had to simplify the whole thing down. And that's a whole other set of skills that's caused no end of grief for me. And I've had to rethink the way that I communicate. Even the other day, he sent me through 5 more pages. And I said, these look great. And then I had another look at them. I said, no, actually, this isn't working. And he said, that's what's on the pages. And I didn't understand. Language, so I wasted days getting back to him. He wasted days getting back to me, and we actually were agreeing on the same thing, but the language barrier was in the way.
So we haven't heard from our panelists from the Triassic period a little bit. So I figure let's let Buddy get a word in here real quick.
Yes, please, Buddy. You have a unique experience as well with Sins of the Fae. So if you could touch on that for us in your,
I had an artist, Joe Sanchez. He's a great guy, great with lines and that kind of thing. And we ran into an experience where, he could not draw my imagination. My brain is a very weird place. It's kind of trippy. And when I would give him certain things, it would come back to me in a very geometric, planar, almost, like looking at something, say, like from the 90s, like a PlayStation 1, compared to today, right? And just everything, he wasn't able to do what I needed. And I was already on page 38 of 48.
Oh.
So I was like, oh,
God.
And, I'd already simplified the story so that we could possibly, get by, because I was noticing, like, okay, this isn't working, that isn't working. There were some things, like he would come back to me and say things like, because of my religion, I don't want to do this. And I would say, okay. I had, like, one of the characters, she cuts herself and bleeds, and the blood, in my opinion, was like identification, like the natural order of things. Like, she's sprinkling blood on a flower. The flower recognizes her by her blood. And so when it does recognize her, it releases its power to her. He's like, I can't do blood. That's witchcraft. Yada, yada. I said, okay, fine. She eats it. We're going Alice in Wonderland. Totally different, And he wanted to draw like a flower of circles. And I was like, this is not a magic girl anime. So that didn't work. Eventually, Xevious, who was the colorist at the time, he told me, he's like, man, I can do colors. I can't do this art though. He's like, I'm not a sequential guy. I went and I showed him Black Orchid from, I think, early 90s with Neil Gaiman and Dave McKeon, I think, and with Vertigo. And he was like, oh, I can do that. And I said, well, then let's do that.
So you adapted to him, like you did the Marvel method with him.
Oh yeah, I don't send Xevious scripts. I send him like stories. You know, I send him like pictures so to get the aesthetic correct. You know, because we change. I don't know if you noticed, like in the story, like different depending on the mood of what's going on, the actual style changes. And I adapted that from manga because manga does that, but in a different way, usually for like comedic sake. And I wanted to do it for the things. I'm like, okay, like if we're gonna draw like a dream, we need it to be like bubbly and different and like really trippy. Like let's lean into it. And that's been my thing. Lean into it. Let's just go into this. You know what I mean? And so we have. And then there was one time where it was like I said I want this elevator mural, which is the picture that I sent out for the ad for this for this presentation. And he was like, well, what are we going to do? What is that? What is going to go on? And I sent him this horrible drawing. Because he said, I want a drawing of it. I want you to draw me something. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, I'm an artist. You want me to draw? Or I'm a writer. You want me to draw? It's going to be like stick figures. And it was horrible. But
That's fine, though.
He extrapolated it and he turned it into that. And then he's like, okay, well, what do you mean this goes into? He's like, what do you mean? Like the ocean comes into? And I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea. So I went with it. And then that became even trippier. And we went and, I started writing the script from that. Is that in the novel that this entire thing is based on? No. But one, that causes that, like, if you want two different experiences with the same story, you can have them.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying now, buddy, because now we've got both extremes with your story. So essentially what we have is in the first instance, you having to hold the guy's hand because he can't get into your brain. So you have to bring him up to your visual language of what you're saying, which is you have to be more hands-on with him.
Yeah.
With Xevious, it's you're trying to adapt yourself to his brain because he does things in a particular way. He doesn't draw sequentials, so you had to essentially almost create a different story for him. That's not like the novel.
Yeah,
it's an example of both things with your story.
Yeah, it's very different, this story compared to the old one. And most of that is the collaboration with Xevious, because Xevious will come in and say things like, I don't want to kill the kid. Okay. So I completely changed the story. So
but you're willing to at least be free on that. You're not as dead set on like certain aspects. You can work with it.
No, I mean, to me, a story is about particular beats. It's about the character, their development. You have some of the plot and everything going on, but what really the story is somebody or a group of people want something. There's something opposing that something. There is conflict. There's development, and in the end, there's resolution. As long as we meet those particular points, I don't. It's sort of, you want a titty bar? Put it in a titty bar.
Particulars don't really matter along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I remember you talking about the same kind of thing before. You're like, well, when I look at Dan's story, I'm tethered because there's like rock A and then there's a bedrock B, and these things have to be connected, but the tether between them is tenuous, and that's where you write in the connective tissue to make everything work, and it's the same kind of thing.
See, I did a book a couple 10 years ago, and it was almost like that. Like he sent me pretty much like a story, like almost like a novel in a way. And I this is almost like the first book I ever did. And so I was trying to break it up into panels, into page count, thinking what would work, what wouldn't work, what I'd have to take out. So I was like editing things. And at this point, I was praying for someone like John Hervey who could just be like, this is what I need you to draw. Do it. It was just too loose at that point. And it just would have been nice for a little direction, because he just sent me like a full on, like there was almost no talking in it. It was just crazy. I mean, and I'm not bashing the product. If people find it and read it, it's good, I guess. I didn't write it. I just drew it. But it was way too loose for me. I can work with loose on my own because I'm kind of writing it as I go in my head while I'm drawing it. So I kind of have that luxury. I am writing it as I go, like a writer would just write the story as he goes, but I'm just drawing it. So then I know what's going on. So it's the same thing as writing it. It's weird. But if I can easily work with somebody like John, who's going to give me like a script and be like, this is what I want. Cool, let's do it. Let's have some fun. Now, if Kimo just tosses me something like this is a looseness of what's in page 1, I could be like, awesome, I'm going to play with this. I'm going to like put some weird stuff over here and see if he likes it. And if not, he'll tell me and I can get rid of it. A good artist can work with either which way. But then again, there's plenty of great artists who just can't. They need that structure. Like I said, if I had somebody like John on that first book, I think it would have just came out a lot better and a lot more structured.
Well, the thing with novels, they're such a different medium than comics. I know we all write across different mediums, but taking a novelization, which I have done, and turning that into a comic, I mean, you got to make a lot of choices.
Yep.
Because you have the liberty and the freedom in novelization. Like right now, I'm reading the Sunsworn novel, and the beauty of it is, with the novelization is, as you're going along, you can expound on anything. You can give breadth and depth and history about anything as you go along. But in a comic, you kind of got to be in the moment. You got to figure out what stuff you're going to show, what stuff you're not going to show. So it's really, it's a separate challenge, stepping, I guess, towards something else you were saying, Jason. The funny thing is, I've been working with Rod on Black Tiger for a long time. So as we moved on to some of the next episodes, or issues, this is what Rod said to me. This is what I want to see in the book. He's like, I want to see X, Y, and Z. Can you write around that? And I said, yeah, I can.
That's cool.
So because at the end of the day, the development of the property, it started with the script, but the pieces are so much greater than the whole. I mean, he's developed the look and the feel. He's developed, while I had ideas, he's the one that ultimately developed what the characters ultimately looked like, what costumes looked like, what the world looked like. So he's fully engaged in the process of building and developing. And he said, hey, you know what? These are some things that I'd like for you to put into the next story. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can write around that. We can make that work. In fact, I think it enhanced the story. So it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys who can make the completely editorial thing. What is it, Von Klaus with Monster
MD?
Mm-hmm.
That's not to make anybody upset. That is one of the 3, like, quote unquote CG books I've actually finished, and I liked it. It wasn't perfect, but it was really good. And I saw like some of his script, for it, and it was very, very exact and thorough. And he's doing what is her name, Lady Alchemy. He's writing that book, and he's doing the same thing for that. I've seen some of that script, and it's the same thing. I mean, he's got like pictures laid out in a particular format, but he does say sometimes he's got like, have fun with this, do this, But it's still pretty exacting. I don't even know if I could write that way. I get what you're saying by the John, by the whole like, I very, very well understand the differences between novelization and comic book now. After this year endeavor, because I mean, one of the major differences is like you can let things simmer in a novel, whereas in a comic book you really have the first page. If you haven't captured people in the first page, if there's not something there they want, they're just going to move on, because that's what I do.
Yep.
1-2 pages, I'm done. You don't got me, I'm out.
That's right.
Especially in the days of a 22-page comic, and even in the 70s at times there are even less than 22 pages. If you've got 20 pages, say, and 1/20th of your book is 1 page, and you're not catching me in that first page, I'll spend my $1.25 elsewhere. Back it was $2.50 for a Spider-Man comic when I was in high school. That's a lot of money back then for us. $2.50 for this is during the Clone Saga, mind you. So I'm going to spend my $2.50 elsewhere if you can't get me.
Yeah, and that's that you have to come into it with that mindset. Like with a novel, it's like the first chapter. People will give you the first chapter, but in a comic book, it's really the first page.
So then, going off of that, would you want the artist to have a free for all on the first page? You grab them in, and then develop this character.
I think it depends. Like again, I've read like a lot of different scripts. I don't ever go into anything willy-nilly. I read and research anything that I go into. And when I started doing this, I read a whole lot of scripts by like Neil Gaiman and it was Moore,
Mm-hmm.
and Alan Moore and those kind of things. And those guys' scripts, you want to talk about scripts? For some of like the Sandman, I mean, Neil Gaiman would write like 5 pages for a page.
Oh, jeez.
And it was just, I want a specific oblong, long rectangular panel on this side, Hugin on that corner, the exact eye reflection here. Like, what? I don't know if I want to try and do that.
Yeah.
I was just saying in the chat there, I was saying to Dean, because Dean's working a book with me later this year, I said, "Oh, Dean, thanks for working with my super vague scripts, because I type it out like it's dialogue in a movie, and I know what's happening visually, and then I'll just go back and I'll sort of say this guy punches this guy, that guy punches that guy, and throw a few things in there." Because Jason was talking about working with loose scripts and how he doesn't mind a bit of flexibility. I said to Dean, "Thanks so much." And Dean says he prefers working that. He likes being the visual director. I don't know if I could do what you're talking about with Game in there, where he sits down and works out. Like, I don't visualize every panel. I visualize it as a sequence of events, and I write out what's happening. And I'll have one or two panels that I know how I want them to look. I want this to be a splash page. I want this guy to be in the foreground, but it's fairly loose, and I tend to leave a lot of that with the artist. And if I was working with an artist who needed more direction, I don't know necessarily that I would stick with them. I'd probably say, well, that's more work than I want to do. I've got other stuff I'm doing. Like, I've written this script. I want you to run with it. I guess I would just look for someone that could run with it. Someone like Dean, someone like Kelsey, who I'm working with on Company Men, who I can give this semi-loose script to that's got a bit of flexibility. And they say, yeah, I can not pick up the slack, but I can meet you halfway. Not even halfway. I've done 90%. I want them to do 10%. Give me that 10% input. Whereas probably, Gaiman and Moore wants that here's 100%. All you've got to do is draw what I visualize. And if you see someone like Garth Ennis, his scripts are more like a movie script. He sees, I say, panel one, this guy's sitting, he looks kind of like this, he's got this tattoo and this sort of shirt on. Panel two, he picks up a cigarette and lights it. It's all very factual and structural, but he doesn't tell you what sort of panel he was. It doesn't tell you necessarily that it's a close-up, but he'll tell you when sound's coming off panel and stuff like that. I think that's probably the limits of how strict I could be with I don't even want to do that much work. That's more work than I want to do.
At the end of the day, though, Kemosabe, that you're really doing what a writer does. I mean, I write more like a writer-director, and then my artist is more like a cinematographer. You know what I mean? They're taking the direction, and because you're actually doing, that's what I mean. I'm really kind of combining the two, and that's for better or for worse. Sometimes the cinematographer has to take a step back and say, like, this is some crappy direction. No, exactly, and then be like, you need to rethink what you're trying to do, or hey, here's a better way of going about what you're doing. This
doesn't work on the page. You say, I want you to draw this, and they come back and say that doesn't work. That's not the best way to do things. And Dean said earlier, he said let an artist be an artist. Otherwise, and if you just do my way or the highway, you end up with an inferior product. I suppose there's a small percentage of people like Gaiman and Moore that are that good that they don't get the inferior product by being my way or the highway, but probably the rest of us fall into that realm. We probably need to have some flexibility, even on a purely 100% this is my vision script. You still got to be able to hear the artist come back, like John's saying, and saying, man, that's not going to work on the page. And you go, okay, well, let me come up with something else. So let's collaborate. You tell me what can work. Here's some options. Tell me what works for you. If you don't have even a few degrees of flexibility, you're probably going to run out of artists to work with, or you can only work with one particular artist who'll put up with your bullshit.
Exactly. And at that point, you've given what your vision is. And if the vision isn't working, man, you want to know before you produce a darn book, whether that's working or not. You want to know in the early stages. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? I see where you're trying to go. There's another way to do this, or just like, dude, we need to abort this. We need to go in a completely different direction.
Well, Comics Kellaway, he's a mate of ours. He's got a book coming out called The Sheriff, and he's gone through, I'm not even joking, probably a dozen artists, because they just don't do what he wants to do. He's got a very specific vision. I've seen the same 3 or 4 pages for the start of the book drawn by a dozen to a half a dozen different artists, different colors. He's not happy with any of them. He wants a very, very specific vision. And I'm sure when the book comes out, it's going to be exact. It's going to be precise. It's going to tell the exact story he wants to tell. I've read the script for the first, I think it's 260 pages to make a 120 page story. I've read the first one. It's great. It's a fantastic Punisher-esque sort of story of revenge. He's so specific. I think he's running out of artists. Like, he needs to find someone that can work with him. And it's going to be really hard. Like, I think Professor Rapt was saying before, you can't draw my imagination. He's got something in his head, and what he's seeing on the page is not what he's seeing in his head. That's slowing his project down.
You have to embrace the collaborative nature of comics. And the thing that I enjoy about comics is when you're working with an artist, even with the style that I like, the artist catches the vision. But I mean, I'm an artistic wannabe, but they're real artists, So, I mean, they're like, dude, I see what you're trying to do. Let's do this. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's so much better. That's so good.
Oh, yeah. It
makes your day. Yeah. I remember being a kid and opening a Spider-Man issue, was fighting the Shocker, and I was down the bottom, and it had, Mark Bagley on pencils, Roger Stern writing, Randy Emblin on ink, someone else on color, someone else on letters. And I thought, screw that. When I do comics and I'm a big boy, I'm going to do the whole thing myself. I do not want to do the whole thing myself. I'm happy writing essentially half a script and letting the artist pick up the other half while I go do another script. Collaborative. That's one of the best things about comics is visual and verbal collaboration. And it's also collaboration of a half a dozen people on a project to create this thing that's better than maybe we could do ourselves. Look at Eric Larson on Savage Dragon. There's a point there where he was doing everything but the letters himself. He'd write, pencil, ink, and color it, and somebody else did the letters, and the book nearly fell apart. He had 2-3 month delays in between issues. The quality dropped, the story quality dropped. He hemorrhaged thousands of buyers. Like his numbers went from 10,000 down to 3, down to 2. He's sub 1,000 sales a month now because he's trying to do too much himself. So you see where your strengths are.
Should probably not express his sexual tension in the comic book.
Yes.
Well,
that's a whole other thing.
It's a whole other stream.
That's a whole other thing.
So we're gonna do that one. The sexuality of Eric Larson.
There's very few books out there that have got lore as deep as Savage Dragon. It's like the stuff that happened in the first 5 issues still matter now. Like it's the deepest, most complex lore I've come across this side of Wheel of Time. It's not something anybody can just pick up and delve into. They're going to pick it up and go, well, this isn't... I remember buying it 15, 20 years ago, and he was a cop, and he hasn't been a cop for 20 years now, and he's a cop.
It's not even him anymore.
Not even him anymore. It's his son, yeah. So it's the whole thing's fallen apart. So you embrace the collaborative nature of it. I think if you're not able to do that, maybe you should be writing a novel. If you can, because it is a very different thing. You can just wax lyrical. You can say, Stephen stood in front of the city gates. He recalled the time his father, and then just give the whole. You shouldn't, but you could. You go give the whole life story right there in front of the city gates as he ponders all the challenges that's going to come from entering the big city for the first time. You can't really do those big flashbacks in a comic like that. You got to be, like John said, you got to be in the moment so much. So if you can't collaborate, maybe think about taking a step back and just writing a novel and doing it that way. I got a bunch of stories that I know work better in a novel format than a comic, and stories that are so big. I don't want to pay someone to draw a 300-page comic. I can barely afford the one that I have put together.
I hear you.
I want
to draw a 300-page comic. So
Exactly. Yeah, I just pay someone to do a good cover and go.
I think the sort of immediacy of a comic book is kind of like, and bear with me on this analogy because you're going to think it's really weird, but I think it's kind of like Tai Chi and Jiu-Jitsu. And what I mean by that is you look at Tai Chi as like a book. Like it's flowing, it's long form. And when they finish something, it's great. And it works for what that is. But if you take that in a fight, you lose. And then you have Jiu-Jitsu.
Unless you're Jet Li.
And then you have like Jiu-Jitsu and you get wrapped up. And if I got you in an arm bar and you don't tap, I break your arm.
Yeah.
And that's it. And like it's the same thing in a comic book, right? Like the comic book is in your face because you are enacting like all those different, the audio and or excuse me, not audio, but you're enacting all that. Well, you do get like you think of the sound, so you do kind of hear it as well. But you're getting all of those sensations at one time. You're reading and you're thinking and you're looking at the colors and the beautiful art, and it kind of hits you hard, and you're confabulating something within your mind. And if it doesn't strike you immediately, then it's gonna be like, it's just gonna fall limp and you're gonna leave.
Yeah, because it is 1/20th of the whole product, and you don't have time to invest to give it that whole chapter, like you said. I was only thinking a second ago when John was saying about how the stuff you can do in a novel that you can't do in a comic, or doing a novelization of a comic, or taking a comic and turning it into a novel. Think about in a novel when somebody says, her face hardened and she took a step back and folded her arms to let you know that she's pulling away from the conversation, that she's not happy with what she's hearing. Now imagine trying to do that in a comic. If you've got to actually draw it, you've got to get an artist that can do those facial expressions that convey that, or you've got to have this really heavily handed narration where in the narration box goes, her face hardened and she pulled away from it. That doesn't work in a comic book.
It doesn't work.
Again, collaborative nature. You've got to have somebody that can put what you're thinking onto the page.
Yeah.
Well, that's also.
Sorry, go ahead, bro.
I was just going to say real quick that an artist almost speaks a different language than we do. Like an artist has a different set of skills. You know what I mean? Liam Neeson, I have a particular set of skills. And as writers, we have a set of skills, and our skills do overlap a little bit, but really what they're doing is translating what we put, what we have. You know what I mean? But in the case of like Will, it's almost like a filtered translation because Dan's already got what he wants, right? So Dan's already got what he wants. Will's translating a translation because, Dan's already translated his own translation. And then he puts it up and Will's like, I think I could add some stuff here to make it a little bit mine. And
I suppose there's James.
Huh?
I said Will's is the new King James.
Translation.
Yes.
I think I could add
Right.
something interesting to this because I'm in a unique position, I think, than all of you. You all are basically the creator and the boss, essentially, of your book. You know, whether
Yeah.
you're the artist or you're the owner of a company like John Hervey that's doing many projects. He's the editor. Oden is the editor of Nine Realms. Buddy is the creator of this book, and he's a collaborator. Kimosabi, same thing. Jason, he's his own guy. He's an auteur. Me, I am an editor, writer, and I work for the owner of the company who has these intellectual properties. And then my job is to, as a middleman, oversee the creation of these properties, right? So, Dan will say, I want this book. I have this concept for this book. Here's all the stuff I want. Here's all the concrete stuff. It may not be a story, but get me the story and get me this artist. So it's an interesting balancing act to do that, because not only do I have to maintain the integrity of what he wants, but I have to woo this guy, this artist, by giving him a playground. So there's two things going on there. There's the editorial demand from Dan, and then there's the creative demand from the artist, because he's just like, let me do what he says, because we're not hiring this guy, a sought-after artist, to just do what we say. We want to utilize him. We want him to be him, but he's going to want to change things maybe, or not do, what I write. So it's an interesting position I'm in, where I've got to constantly be dynamic in two directions, and I think I'm doing the Marvel as well as the DC method at the exact same time.
Well, it's sort of like a sous chef, because like as a sous chef, you're taking care of both. You're taking care of the lower chefs, making sure they cook every individual piece correctly, but you've also got to appease the head chef, the head guy, that and make sure that he's getting the dishes that he wants or whatever's going right too. So
pleasing because he cares that the artist is pleased, because in the end, Incredible Comics is an artist company. It's owned by an artist, so the artist is going to come first. And so what I end up doing is I have to essentially evaluate psychologically every artist and go, what am I dealing with here?
You have to manage the talent.
Yeah. Does this guy need me to write everything for him? Does he want it? Does he want what Jason kind of wants? Is it kind of the anxiety of not knowing, right? Like,
so did 6 a.m. want green M&Ms? He sounds like a green M&M guy to me.
or does the artist just say, give me what the rough action is and I want to play? Or you get to know the artist and you write the moments for him, because you know that those are the flourishes you write. Say, for example, I don't know, a Charlie Snogans, right? I know Charlie can do this, and I know he'll like this, so I'm going to write those moments for him. I think that's where it all comes in. So I find myself, and maybe you guys can relate to this and maybe add to it, or I'm sure John can, is pleasing those two groups, and psychologically evaluating each artist that you work with.
Well, I mean, you're doing that. You're doing it well, and that is especially in a company. I mean, when you're doing it well, you've got the heyday of Marvel. The reason why we love comics, the reason why we read comics. When that's done well. So I mean, it takes a different skill set to pull that off. I think you're a lot of things when you're doing that, man. You're a psychologist. You're all kinds of things.
Politician in particular.
Yeah.
I think that like hits the crux of it, though. You gotta love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what we're gonna do is we're rolling up on 1 hour mark here. And so what I want to keep these to around an hour and a half. So what I want everyone to do is go around and give some closing thoughts on things, and then we're going to go and let people share. We're going to bring up people's projects really quick so that people can become more acquainted with your work from a visual standpoint, and then we'll wrap it up. So
Sounds good.
Yeah, and whoever wants to start off with any closing remarks, if you guys want to get a final say, please go on ahead.
Yeah, right. I was thinking earlier just about the ownership. The fact that if you say my way or the highway, the artist is going to have no ownership over the work. They're not going to feel like they're invested. You might get a very mechanical, very stilted output. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where you look saying what you did, Michael. You took Dean on as co-creator because you had input that you liked, and you're clearly the sort of dude that rewards that sort of input, that sort of investment. So even if it's your script, if you give the artist a little bit of flexibility, to have fun and do stuff, they're going to feel some element of ownership, and they're going to feel invested, and they're going to give you more, and they're going to put more into it. Again, I'm just going to fall back on the idea that you've got to be somehow flexible, and there's some great points raised about putting stuff in the script that the artist is going to like to draw. You've all heard these stories from writers that say, I talked to my artist, he said, what do you like drawing? What do you hate drawing? He said, I hate drawing horses. Great. Never going to do a horse scene. What do you love? Cars. Okay, car chase. Let's chuck a car chase in there, because we can be flexible like that. We've got our beginning, middle, and end. We've got our 3-act structure, whatever structure you want to use. You know how you want it to end. There's a lot of space to play in the middle, and if you keep your artist happy, you're going to get a better product overall. Dean's always going on about how the artist is a real superstar of the comic book product, and I don't agree with him, because without an artist, writers can still be writers, but without a writer, an artist is just doing pinups. And some artists who write for themselves probably shouldn't. They should probably, Brian Hitch did that book of his own. Like, his stuff on Ultimates and Authority and JLA was amazing. Then he did his own like JLA-esque book where he wrote it. I didn't finish the first issue. Like, it just didn't even. It was like Professor Raptor said, first couple of pages didn't grab me, even with Brian Hitch's stunning work. So definitely consider giving your artists some amount of ownership. But I don't mean like contractual ownership. I mean ownership of the stuff that goes on the page, so they feel invested, so they still feel like it's at least partway their product and their property, and they love it. They care about it. They've got affection for it, because they don't have affection for it. It's just a job. They're just mercenaries. They're just getting paid. And I've seen this as a colorist I've been working with. He's very, very good. He's very, very fast, but it's just I know he can just pump out 5 pages in a day and give them back to me, and I pay him, and the next day he's got 5 more pages. He doesn't have any investment in it. So when I say I need this done, he goes, well, I've got 10 other projects lined up, you'll have to wait your turn. There's not that investment like the artist does. The artist says, I'm on board for every book, every character, every sketch, every bit of concept art. He's not charging the extra for those bits and pieces, because he sees this as his book. He sees it as a milestone and a stepping stone for the rest of his career. It's getting really a lot of traction in Brazil where he is, a lot of Brazilian eyes on it. He's looking forward to doing some stuff with it in his own country, and saying, this has got his name on the front cover. He's so hyped for that. So again, be flexible, give the artist a little bit, feed them their favorite food every now and then. Like, you got to keep them interested. You got to keep them happy. They're our pets that we pay, but they have love and heart and soul, and they can put that towards a project if you let them.
Yeah,
I want to let Jason get in there, because I know that it looked like he really wanted to get something in, and we haven't heard from him in a sec. So
I mean, not really. I would just say get to know your artist, for one. There's, like, as an artist myself, I know I can't do particular styles. So, like he was saying, if you can't draw a horse, I'm not going to put any horses in it. But at the same time, the artist should be like, well, look, I can't draw a horse now. I can later. I'm going to practice. So get to know your artist a lot, and learn and ask ahead of time. Be like, hey, do you prefer this style of writing, or do you prefer that style of writing? And if they can't do one or the other, be like, look, I got to find a different guy then, because this is how I work. There's no shame in getting what you want. You're, as a writer, you know what you want, and so you do it. But you can also, you want to be free and let the whole creative team think that it's their project. It's something that they can breathe life into, even if it's the writer, you created it. You want them to have their own little piece of it, and it makes them feel like he said, it makes them feel like it's theirs too. And you'll get better work out of any creative team if they feel like it's more a part of theirs as well as just a machine pumping out work. It's like, look at Jim Lee's X-Men days. Look at Jim Lee's Batman days. X-Men's way more fun. You could just tell he was having fun. So get to know him. Like, hang out on backstage chats. Talk a little bit, even if it's not about comics. Just get to know people, and through that, you will also learn how to work with them in the field. So, I don't know.
It also helps if as a professional, to be able to say to people, like going off what you said, and I think that's such great advice for anyone here, it's a good idea as a professional to say, hey, this is how I communicate, this is how I like to work. Put it out front. So, hey guys, my name's Kim Asabi, leader of my friends, this is what I like to do. And some people go, oh no, I don't like the sound of that. That guy sounds like a dickhead. Okay, we won't work together. Peace. It's all good. Other people go, yeah, that's my jam. It's definitely the sort of thing I like to do. So don't make it a secret. Don't hide. Just straight up say, this is what I want. This is how I want it. Can you deliver? I'm paying you. Can you deliver? It's my money. It's my wife's money. But, when I was working, it was my money. Again, there's no shame in getting what you want. I'm saying, I'm going to pay you X dollars for this page. This is what I want on the page. And I'm happy to have that input. But if he's not able to work the way I want to work, definitely find somebody else for your project. And maybe you could keep him in mind for a future project or something else down the line. I mean, this is a great... It's very incestuous. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's connected. People know people. 7 degrees of Michael Oden. Who knows who?
All right. John, going ahead. Hit us with your closing remarks.
I agree with these gentlemen. Buy-in is key. If you don't get buy-in from your artist, then either your project isn't compelling or you don't have the right artist. And if you don't want input from your artist, either you don't have enough faith in your artist or you're too much of a control freak. Because comics are about collaboration. Comics, the parts are always greater than the whole when it's done well. And even if you're the creator of a book, you have to appreciate the other elements that are being brought to the table. I mean, we're just talking about the writer and the penciler / maybe inker. We're not even talking about what colorists bring to the table. We're not even talking about what letters, because letters can make or break a book. I mean, these elements are additive and valuable and make your book, it's either going to make your book something that looks hot. Because come on, we've all opened up a book and seen the letters and just been like, yeah, no.
No, thank you.
Comic give it a shot because the lettering was so bad. So that's my 2 cents, guys.
All right, Try-Rassic, let's rock it.
I am the Professor Raptor, and I know what you after. No, I think that I agree with everybody. I mean, there's definitely buy-in. There's definitely, everything is better through collaboration, in my opinion. I think if you only have something and it's solely of yourself, then that's all you're going to get. And obviously, like, are you everything? Can you be everything? I can't be. I'm willing to admit that. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to have a peer-reviewed process. There's a lot of people that are against being like, have beta readers and that sort of thing, look over what you've done and check it out. I'm not, because I've found that if you are not even willing to let someone look at your work and maybe not even like critique you, but tell you, I sent someone who loves like everything I make today. I sent her something or excuse me, the opposite. She hates everything I make. And she said, well, what about this? This would be cooler. And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. I like that idea. So I incorporated it, And the thing is you never know where that's going to come from. You never know. But as far as like an artist, I don't speak artist. I don't speak visual as well as they do. And so I defer to most of what like Xevious comes up with in that regard because he just does it better than me. Like I imagined, I was like, I want this girl, like, okay, I want her stuck in her own thoughts, and so I said, okay, I want her, like, she's, caught between, different like synaptic pulses between the axon and dendrite. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm thinking about it in my head. I'm like, this is going to be so cool. And he sent it back to me. I'm like, that is nothing like I imagined. And it is way better. I think, like, not to be upset, but I think the previous writer or artist would have given me like tentacle porn, and that would not have been okay. So I think most people would probably, if you go to Xevious or my Twitter, you can see this picture. If you scroll through, it's like a beautiful luminescent purple, pink, and a bunch of different colors of like, different pulsing electronic synapses on this page with like Nikki and her flowing blonde hair on the left side, and it's amazing. It looks like something trippy, like right at a Blade Runner, and you're like, holy crap, what is this? I couldn't have imagined that. I could not have created that on my own, but together we did. Absolutely. And I mean, that's something, you could put that on a poster anywhere. That could be on somebody's wall. And are those kind of creations made in a vacuum? I don't think so. So if you want to be great, then collaborate.
Catchy and it rhymes.
All right. Closing thoughts from the great Will Perdomo.
Well, so I pretty much agree with what everyone said. The big one to me is buy-in as well. And considering my unique position that I'm in, I have to go back to the original question, Marvel versus DC. I have the Marvel method with Dan because he demands that, which is a dynamic, constantly changing, jamming out the story. He's drawing, I'm writing on top of it. He's responding, and that works great. But as the editor and his proxy, his proconsul, if you will, to people working for us, I have to use my discretion by talking to the artist to see, is it Marvel with this man or woman, or is it DC with this man or woman? And if once I figure out the method, that's when I start to sell them to say, I'm writing this for you. You know, even though I might be holding your hand to different degrees, I like to give them the impression, and it is true, because their camera is the one that's going to be filming it. Like Buddy just said, I would never come up with that, me being Buddy. So I want them to own the book visually. And the only way to do that is to get them, as Kimosabi said, and everybody echoed, to buy in. And you do that only through talking to the artist and learning how they think and what let's call it their visual fetishes are, what moments they're looking for, and give it to them. Because there's nothing like, I'll tell you one thing, there's nothing like writing something, delivering it to an artist, and seeing them light up and go, I love that. That is a really rewarding thing, especially if it's an artist you really, really want to impress. That is a very rewarding thing. So I hope everyone can experience that who wants to do their own book. I hope everyone in this panel has experienced that, because to me, that's the juice that makes the action worth it.
Yeah, X will tell me, because he's a punk. He actually did punk rock music in his teenage days, and he just kind of looks at me like, on, you know, we get on a StreamYard together. He looks at the script, and then he'll look up and he'll say, "I'm gonna rock it."
Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling when they say that to you. It's an awesome feeling.
I say that to myself all the time.
Jason just goes, yes.
Have you seen the book that Jason's done? I mean, it pretty much says that on every page.
You're too kind.
Jason's just like, okay, guys. Yeah. But anyway, so we're with everyone's closing thoughts being done here, we're gonna highlight everybody's projects here real quick. So we're going to start with John's, since he made it in a little bit late. We're gonna take a little quick look at Magna the Last Pantheon, Volume 1. So I'm going to share screen that so that people can get a chance to see it. We'll let John talk about it for a quick minute or two, and then we'll move on to Lee, then Jason, and up through till me, and then I'll give my closing statement and what have you. So let's rock this. All right.
Ooh.
All right. So Magna the Last Pantheon, for those that have purchased Black Tiger, it's in the same universe, but this is a different story set in a different era. You know, for those of you that enjoy mythology and little World War II history, you get a nice mash of the two, and some good old-fashioned superheroism. It's all mixed up in this story. This campaign is closing soon. The feature tier, which is the commission from Rod Looper, that's closing tomorrow night. And then there'll still be beanies and books available. And then this campaign will be closing by the 17th of May, because our next campaign, Black Tiger Hidden Dragon, will be launching on the 18th.
Yeah, just look at that art, guys. You know, talk about working with a great artist. This book looks outstanding.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate working with Marcio Abreu on this book. He really caught the vision. He caught the fire of what I was trying to portray. And he did a great job with the different members of the Pantheons, with the heroine, Kadi, just really, portraying her the way that I wanted her portrayed. You know, she is a ginger, which I realize isn't a very in thing right now. But she is.
You could be a
powerful
black man writing about a redheaded woman. The other way.
Yeah, I know that. I'm sure that there are folks that aren't happy about that, but so be it.
So be it.
You know, and the different Pantheons, you'll get a flavor for the world. And you'll get a flavor for her as she kind of develops, as her story develops.
Outstanding. Well, John,
like
thanks
a
so much.
red writing redneck kind of feel here.
Thanks so much for coming on, man. We're gonna move on here to the accompaniment, Dead, White, and Blue. So,
yeah, fantastic. So, accompaniment, Dead, White, and Blue. There we go. In a world where being superhuman is illegal, the company made America's dirty little secret. They're a CIA-funded prevention and response unit on paper, but in reality, they're a superhuman hit squad protecting the nation's interests in the Middle East. They receive information that a terrorist attack is imminent, one so large it's going to affect even the United States itself, and they follow every lead in a desperate race against the clock to stop it. At every turn, they are betrayed and attacked by enemy and ally alike until a final showdown tests their loyalty to the country, their job, and to each other. This is high stakes, world-ending spycraft, subterfuge. This is shades of grey and moral ambiguity. This is the world of no good guys, no bad guys, just guys, skilled, competent, capable men of action that are able to have agency and they're able to affect the world around them. These guys are fighting to protect the status quo, essentially. These guys are CIA-funded hit squad. They find out there's a huge terrorist attack coming. It's going to start another war. America can't afford to be invested in another war at the moment. So these guys know there's high stakes. Along the way, they get burned by the CIA. The more they investigate this incoming imminent terrorist attack, the more their own company, their own employers push back against it to the point where they get burned, they get cut off from the CIA. They're stuck in the Middle East, surrounded on all sides by terrorists and enemy threats, and they don't have the resources, they don't have the clout, they don't have the authority that they had 10 minutes ago before they got burned. So not only do they have to stop this terrorist attack, not only do they have to clear their own names and get in good with the CIA, but they also need to escape this war zone alive and get back home in one piece. So this is a sort of story, constant non-stop action, flat character arcs where the action just keeps jumping up and up and up. It's a bunch of red herrings, it's a bunch of betrayal, triple agents, double crosses. You don't know who's working for who. You don't know who's on their side, who's against them. It's very, very layered, very complex, very mature storytelling, but at the same time, it's got big action movie budget type feel. It starts off with the assassination of a major African leader, and it ends, the first issue, 60 pages of a 180-page story. The first issue ends with a 12-page knockdown, drag-out fight between two superhuman teams. If you imagine X-Men versus Hellfire Club, sort of just all in, just this huge brawl right in the middle of the city. That's how the first book ends, on this high point of this huge battle that says, okay, if we weren't onto something, if we weren't really tracking something that's a real threat, nobody would have tried to stop us. These guys have just confirmed they are out there and they're real. We know we need to work twice as hard. We need to push into this. And despite everybody telling us not to, and despite everybody telling us it's not real, we know we're onto the real thing. And if we don't stop it, nobody else will. So I'm all about writing high stakes, big action, big investment, and big payoff.
Fantastic. And thanks so much for coming on here again, Lee. We're going to be moving on here to Jason Bascom's Absolute Book 2. So if I can do this. So much clicking. All right.
Yeah, it's fun, ain't it? Yeah, Absolute Book 2. This is the conclusion of the story arc. Aliens overthrew the Earth decades upon years, upon centuries, or whatever it is ago. And through genetic breeding, you got fallout, alien experimentation. People have developed superpowers or mutations. And so you have an old man who's pretty much just a bounty hunter, lone man, Han Solo type guy. He's seeking out the ultimate prize. He meets this young woman on his way who she's trying to overthrow these aliens. And she kind of slowly veers him in the path of this war. So this takes place after the end of book 1. So you'll find out the develops as they go, and you get to learn their agendas and, what's kind of like they learn more about each other. It's more about character development than a world building aspect. It's kind of like Sin City in a way. I have a very big inspiration with that. So this ends the story arc. So there will be other books of Absolute later on, just I don't know when. And it's currently in the second month. It's got 11 days left. It will go in demand. So back it today.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Jason. We're going to move on to our pal from the Triassic period up in the top right corner. Get to click more things.
Clickety click.
Yes.
Clickety clickety clickety. Okay, so this is Sins of the Fae. It's an overall story, over 10 years in the making. There's a lot of different things to it, but basically it's what would you do or what would happen when angry gods are mad because an alien race comes to Earth called the Fae, and we're not mad at them. We don't push them away. Our gods get angry and want to enslave us for welcoming the Fae. And so we have to join with the Fae, become our own heroes against our gods, and save ourselves.
Oh, wow.
And that's basically, that is the crux of the story. It starts I guess write a little bit differently. I mean, the high stakes and everything, there are those that are there, but I start with something that I think is near and dear to everybody, because I always I go by within the story that like the things that you can relate to, that most easily relate to, are the things you become immersed in. So the story starts with a family. There are two families, and these two families go through basic family things. They're trying to protect each other, trying to make sure that each other's safe, and in that process they get embroiled in a war between gods and Fae Highborn, which are the progenitors of all races and time and space and everything else. But at the beginning, it's a family. It's a family that doesn't want to die.
And I really wish that like, I know that, it's, you've moved on and everything, but like, I really wish that you had some of the old art so that people could see just the upgrade. Because,
I mean, you could kind of see it because you look over at the covers.
yeah, but like,
yeah,
it's just, it's so like, I'm sorry, man. Like, this is one of those things where I was really excited about your book before, and I had backed it back when you had the original artist. But
yeah.
I remember I just went, I was like, man, I wonder what Buddy's doing. And I went and I looked at the art because you had mentioned it had changed, and my jaw hit the floor. So like seriously, this is.
Oh yeah, see,
like,
there's the scroll down a little bit, right there. That's the picture that he sent, that X created.
Yeah,
that
that's awesome.
is Nikki lost in her own thought, a single thought. That's what that is.
That's so freaking cool.
See, I wouldn't think to do it that way.
That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't either. But that's how he drew it, and I was like, "That's awesome."
Yeah.
All right. So, one sec, because I know that Dean will hate me if I forget to pull up our campaign too. But next on the list is none other than Will Perdomo with Dan Frega, and I have lost the share button for. There we go. This whole hosting thing's fun, guys.
So there it is.
All right.
That is Pineapple Perception, Black Flag, Book 1 of 4. As you can see, we're still there. We got plenty of options. You got your AAT, as Kimosabi plugged for us a minute ago. We've got all the stretch goals unlocked, so there's quite a value. For $25, you get the 0.5 book, which is another 24-page book that's got Charlie Snogans, Matt Weldon, 6 a.m., Shelby Robertson, and a cover by Pat Lee. And you've got the 48-page book of Pineapple Perception itself, which is currently being produced by Dan Frega. I have seen the layouts. I am working on the lettering, but drawing on top of the writing on top of the images, as we discussed. So the book is being done finally, and I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised. If you were a fan in the 90s, you're going to get everything you wanted. You're going to get that extreme action, and you're going to get that extreme feel, and you're going to get that extreme AAT. But then the last page will leave you wondering if this is what it all seems to be. Hence the next one, WTF.
Outstanding. All right. Well, and thanks so much again for coming out. Thanks to all of our panelists for coming out. Because it's my time to talk, I'm going to shamelessly plug for a quick second.
End the stream. End the stream.
Yeah, I know, right? Fools! You're trapped. All right. So current campaign is The Embrace on Indiegogo. The Embrace is a story about fatherhood, loss, and justice, and is about our protagonist, Clarence Griffin, who has lost his son a year ago, and is on the verge of taking his own life when he is saved by the ghost of his son, David. And David gives him a revelation of the people that were responsible. And when Clarence comes to, he is in a symbiotic style suit powered by the soul of his son, and they go after the people that were responsible for his child's death to bring them to justice as the spectral hero, The Embrace. And so we have Dean James, who has been hanging out in our chat tonight, and Paul Billick working on our line work and colors. Dean is also my co-creator, as Lee had mentioned before, because without his design, the script of The Embrace would never have been written. Like, it was very difficult for me to write without seeing how without being able to visualize how this character would look. and how his powers look. The line art for this book is over halfway done, and with us receiving the funds and everything here soon, that whole process will speed up. We're on track to have the books out to people no later than August. And we've got a lot of great books, a lot of great covers, a lot of great value with everything. And, we wrapped up our 60 days at over 12 grand, which makes this the biggest campaign that I've done since I've become Nine Realms Publishing. For all of you guys that are in the chat or watching this that have come out and supported us, that support is invaluable, and we wouldn't be here without you. And as we continue to grow, just know that I will not forget anyone that has come out and helped us. This has been a very humbling experience, and for a story as personal as this to really resonated with people and gotten the attention that it's gotten, it's really been fantastic. And so that brings us to the end of the stream. We had a great discussion today in regards to the script writing process. I think that the big takeaway is that it doesn't matter which of these methods that you prefer. What matters is getting the investment of your art team to put out the best product possible. The best way to do that is allow them a level of freedom that gives them that personal sense of ownership of the property. If your artist isn't invested in what you're writing, then why are they your artist, and vice versa? So I think that's pretty much the overall gist of what has been said here tonight. And I really appreciate all of you guys for coming on. You guys are fantastic writers, fantastic artists, Jason, and to have you on this premiere show of the Comic Call has been a real treat and a real pleasure. For those of everyone in the chat, thank you all for showing up. We didn't do it this time, but as we continue to do these shows, I do plan on having a audience Q&A portion of the panel where the audience can ask panelists questions about the topic, and we'll answer them. But there weren't any really questions posed from the audience during the stream today, outside of Dean making some silly remarks towards me having a bias against artists, which is just not true, as we have an artist here on the panel. But the whole point of the show is to get the writer's perspective, because it's honestly one that goes overlooked in this industry for obvious reasons of it being visual medium. But again, I said that we really wanted to keep this in to an hour and 30. We're at an hour 26. So one last time, thank you everyone for coming out here tonight. Thank you to our fantastic panelists. Thank you to my co-host, Will Perdomo. And thank you to the chat. You guys are fantastic. Thanks for everyone's support.
Thank you, gentlemen, for showing up. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks for having us, man.
Man, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you.